Hi, how you doing? The last video I did was about the grow room and my grow lights and how I primarily use that for starting seedlings to plant out in the spring. The video before that was about the greenhouse and how I utilize that space to uh, grow on the seedlings from the grow room before planting out into the garden. And so today I thought I'd do the start of that process, and that is the seed. And it never ceases to amaze me how that one teeny tiny little seed, in some cases they are like a speck of pepper, and how they grow on to produce so much food or so many flowers or even a great big tree. That blows my mind every time I think about it. Specifically today, I thought we'd talk about vegetables and asking ourselves questions about which vegetables we should grow, then narrowing it down into which varieties we should grow based on some specific parameters for cold zone growing. And finally, we'll talk about seed catalogs and do we really need to order from them? I'm Sharon, and I garden on a large yard in a small town in east central Saskatchewan, Zone 3. Welcome to MySaskGarden. Whether you're a large or small gardener, if you want to grow vegetables from seed in a cold zone, in many cases you have to choose your seed wisely, or all your hard work and effort might be for naught. I see a lot of comments on various vegetable growing groups or gardening groups about, why aren't my peppers ripening? It's going to freeze tonight. What do I do? And they're nowhere near ripe. Or why are my peppers still so small on my plant? Or all my tomatoes are still green. What do I do? Or there's other troubles, like you could get a particular disease in your garden every year. What am I doing wrong? Many of these issues can be alleviated by choosing the right variety of seed. The first question to ask yourself is, which vegetables should I grow from seed? Will I save any money? The answer to that is, it depends on how much of something you want to grow. If you're only going to grow maybe a half a dozen ears of corn, you may as well buy those at the grocery store or at farmer's market in the fall, because you have to buy probably 100 seed at least in a package, and that seed isn't going to last from year to year to year. At best, on corn, you would get 2 years of good use before that seed kind of loses its viability. Those 6 ears of corn are an expense, not to mention time, energy, and space that could be utilized better. Now, if you want 12 dozen ears of corn, and you're going to preserve them, you're going to blanch and freeze, or you're going to can cream corn or something like that, then yeah, for sure, you should grow from seed. On the other hand, a dozen or 6 head of leaf lettuce is going to provide you with a lot of food, a lot of leaf lettuce for probably 2 to 3 months, because that's what's referred to as a cut and come again type of vegetable. A cucumber plant is the same. So is a zucchini. You keep picking and it just keeps producing more fruit. Herbs are also great cut and come again type plants. They respond really well to being trimmed back, that they actually prefer that, and you'll have all kinds of herbs for drying and freezing for future use. Another question to ask yourself is, what am I going to eat? What have I grown in the past that I didn't like, or it's been disappointing? And, are you growing it just because everybody else is? A big one for me is kale. I don't like it. And I'm definitely in the tastes awful camp when it comes to cilantro. The answer there is, grow what you're going to eat. Another question to ask yourself is, what can you easily store? Do you have room to store or a place to store a lot of potatoes and a lot of carrots? If you don't, you're going to have a bit of a problem when it comes to harvest. I don't have a cold room. Mostly I like to grow just for fresh eating. I can store a few potatoes for a few months, and I can have a spare fridge in the basement that I can use for carrots. But otherwise, I really prefer just to grow for fresh eating. On the other hand, do you want to can pasta sauce or a bunch of salsa, then for sure grow more paste or Roma tomatoes, peppers, onion, those kinds of things. So think about how you're going to use all that produce and then make your decision as to how much or what kind based on that. What have you grown several times that just hasn't grown well? For me, it's sugar snap peas. I've spent so much money on sugar snap pea seeds, so much time and effort, and they never turn out. Or, I get like 10 pods of peas that I can snack on while I'm in the garden. To me, they're just a big bother. I have to water them more, I have to mulch them, I have to set up a trellising system, and and then they fail. So I've just quit growing them. I think that, as an aside, I think that in my case, sugar snap peas don't like the raised beds because the soil's warm, and peas like a cool salad, and peas like a cool soil. And so that's why I have to mulch them really heavy just to try and keep the soil cool. But it's a failure all the time. And so, yeah, I've quit growing them. Another one is spinach, and same thing. They like a cooler soil, and I can't really provide them that because the beds are raised and it's quite a warm garden. So I've stopped growing them. For me, buying a bag of spinach and buying a bag of peas is going to be just fine, and it's going to taste pretty good. So the next question is, should I grow my own transplants? And you need to think about lighting for sure. What kind of lighting can you provide those transplants? Do you have a great big sunny south-facing window that you can put a table in front of, right in front of the window, and be able to utilize that all season long or all winter long? Or do you have grow lights? Most vegetable plants need full-on bright sun. From the minute that they emerge, they need that, or else they're going to get tall and gangly, weak, spindly, and you may land up with a whole bunch of seedlings that you can't use. Also, be honest with yourself. Can you manage to give up that space, whatever space it is, for 8 to 12 weeks? Because that's what it's going to take for the most part to start seedlings, especially tomato or pepper seedlings, which I think is probably the most common ones that people start indoors, but they take some time and they take a bit of babying. If you are going to start seeds, you may wonder, when should you start them? And there's no one answer for that. Peppers are started at a different time than cabbages and tomatoes, and it depends on what you're doing, on what you're growing, but you don't want to start them really early, because that can get you in trouble, especially if you don't have like a perfect setup for growing them on. And you also have to think about repotting them, because when they start, they're this tiny little seedling and they look really great, and then they grow into something this big, and you need to pot them up into something bigger, and that takes up more space on your table in front of your dining room window, or wherever you have them. And so you do need to consider all of that before you dive in and plant 100 tomatoes. and then you have to pot up 100 tomatoes, and then you have, instead of tiny little cells, you have maybe solo cups or something like that to grow the tomatoes on. A big question is, can't I just direct sow everything in the garden? And yeah, you can, for the most part, except tomatoes and peppers should really be started earlier and be set out in the garden as transplants. Your next question might be, can't I buy those transplants at a garden center? And yes, you certainly can, especially the small local ones. They are a great resource. But still go in either with a list or look up the variety when you get to the greenhouse, and just make sure that variety, days to maturity, and we're going to get to that in a second, but just make sure that variety falls within your, well within your growing window. I wouldn't recommend buying starts where the variety isn't listed, unless the greenhouse can tell you what the variety is. Before you go out and buy more seeds, make sure you check your stash. I tend to do this. You come across something, you say, oh, this is nice. And then you get home and you see that you have something exactly like that or similar to that. So think about what you've grown in the past and check your seeds and see what you have on hand. Not all saved seeds have a good shelf life. I mentioned corn. I think it's pretty good for about 2 years. And then after that, the germination rate really starts to fail. There is a way to do a germination test, and maybe I could do that in another video on testing to see what your germination rate will be on your saved seeds. What is your growing space? If you have a great big traditional garden, you probably don't need to answer that question because you could grow whatever you like. But a lot of us now are growing in raised beds, grow bags, raised planters, and 5-gallon pails. And so you need to use your space wisely. Also, if you're growing in shallow planters, and by shallow I mean soil depth of 10 inches or less, perhaps you don't want to grow great big root crops like carrots that are 12 inches long because they're not going to produce well. There are, however, some varieties of vegetables that are suited, that are bred for those kinds of conditions. For example, here's a couple of varieties of carrots that will grow well in a shallow container. You'll see this one from Vessie's says, best for shallow soils. The roots are 5 to 6 inches long, so that's a really good one to choose. And the next one says it's a fingerling carrot, and it grows only 3 to 4 inches long and 1 inch wide. So that's a great choice for shallow soil. So why buy from catalogs? Can I buy from the dollar store? Why can't I pick them up at a home improvement store or a grocery store? And it all comes down to variety. If the seed you buy at the home improvement store or the grocery store is the variety you want, then for sure, buy them there. You tend to have a little bit more of a guarantee that you're going to get them from a seed catalog as opposed to from the grocery store. You're basically taking a chance there if they have the variety that you want, or maybe you'll have to go to 2 or 3 places to find the variety you want. I personally wouldn't buy seeds from the dollar store. You get what you pay for, and I have read that some people have had great success. And so I just personally wouldn't do it myself. So choose what you want to grow. Choose what kind of cucumbers you want to grow. Do you want to grow for pickles? Then look for pickling cucumbers of some sort. If you want to make salsa, look for plum or paste tomatoes or Roma tomatoes. Choose what you want to grow first and then start looking for varieties. And to do that, you have to start reading the seed catalog or you have to start looking at the packet of seed. Somewhere on that packet it's going to say days to maturity. And that means maturity on average from either the time that the seed has germinated or from the time that the plant has been transplanted. That's what days to maturity are, not from the date that you put the seed in the ground or start the seed in your house. That doesn't count. And that is with good growing conditions. Where I live are most of Saskatchewan, I think, probably. The average frost date, last frost date in May is May 20th. And the average first frost date could be as early as September 11th. It gives a range from September 11th to September 20th, I think. And that's your frost-free days. That's not necessarily your growing days because a pepper plant is going to resent being put out into the garden and told to grow on at, just above 0 temperatures, which is technically frost-free, but the soil's cold and it's not going to like that. Peppers could easily stall their growth at those kinds of temperatures. Soil temperature is a very important consideration, and a lot of seed will not germinate in cold soil. Most of the time, I don't transplant out into the garden, the warm season vegetables, I don't transplant them out until the beginning of June because the soil is cold. And I don't want to shock those plants that I've taken 8 to 12 weeks to grow to begin with. And so I want to make sure I give them the best conditions after that. At best, I hope to count on 100 growing days, good growing days, warm growing days. And I consider it a blessing to not get an early frost, so that maybe my longer season vegetables that I'm growing have a little bit more chance to mature. So having said that, here are some examples that we're going to go through. And I'll just be showing you some examples from TNT seeds or Vessies or William Dam seeds, and just give you some examples of what might be good and what might not be so good. This first one you'll see is Sunglow corn, and it says it's 63 days. Down in the description it says a variety where the growing season is short. Those are always good tips to look for, where the growing season is short, and 63 days for corn is very, very good. The next one is Corn Northern Extra Sweet Hybrid, 62 days, and down in this description you'll see that it says the hybrid shows improved emergence and vigor under cool, wet soil conditions. So that's something to take into consideration, that you could probably seed this earlier and still get good germination. I've grown this variety and I would recommend it. It's a good variety. Then again, from Mackenzie is the early super sweet hybrid, which I believe it's probably the same as the northern super sweet. This one says 65 to 70 days to harvest, and the back of the packet will say specifically designed for short season area. Again, really good good type of seed to look for. Now the next one is this Honey Select Triple Sweet, and you can see down on the bottom 79 days to harvest. So that's a couple weeks difference. Probably not a lot. This still falls within the growing window, but just so you can see that there are longer season varieties of corn as well. On to tomatoes. Early Girl is a big favorite with a lot of people. 54 days to harvest. That means you're getting tomatoes pretty early in the year, which is nice. Instead of having to wait until September to harvest all your tomatoes, you're able to pick ripe tomatoes and enjoy them throughout the summer as well. Early Girl is a favorite for I think probably anywhere in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, anywhere cold. Early Girl is a favorite type of tomato. The next one is Mortgage Lifter, and you see down on the bottom left 83 to 90 days to harvest. So that's a lot. You're going to be picking green tomatoes, and you're going to be waiting for them to turn red in the house probably. Squash, that's a hard one to grow sometimes. Butternut squash, they just don't have enough days, often don't have enough days to mature properly on the vine. This one, it says 85 to 100 days for butternut squash. And the next one is this Waltham butternut squash, 95 days to maturity. Whereas if you chose winter squash early butternut hybrid, it says there very early, and it says 75 days to maturity. I've grown this one. It does mature early. It's probably slightly smaller than some of those great big humongous ones, but when they mature well, they store well. These are winter squash, and so they're meant to store throughout the winter, and that's what you need to look for to get good maturity, is an early maturing variety. The next one, another squash, the different kinds of squash. This one, Honey Nut Hybrid, 110 days. I don't think we're going to get any fruit out of that in Saskatchewan. Maybe. You know, there's nothing that says you you can't have a good year and it's all going to produce. But when we go with the law of averages, chances are we're going to get frost and stuff is going to freeze before you pick mature fruit. The next one is delicata squash. I'd like to grow this one because it does sound like it's really tasty, and I know people do grow it with success. It's 100 days, so you have to be prepared for something like that. I haven't found a delicata squash seed type that has a shorter maturity. Here's another one, another delicata squash with, again, 100 days to maturity. So that's like the entire growing season, and then hoping for no frost or no cold weather. Pumpkins. Lots of people like to grow pumpkins, and you pick a pack off of the seed rack and you think, oh, this will be good. But you really have to look. This one is 100 to 110 days, this Captain Jack. And the next one, Early Giant Pumpkin, is 85 to 95 days. That's a little bit better. And it does say early and large. One of the first to ripen in our trials. That's a good thing to look for. Still 95 days, whereas the next one, it's going to be a smaller pumpkin, but look at that, 60 to 80 days for this neon pumpkin. Finally, this Atlantic Giant pumpkin, 125 days to harvest. That's going to be a tough sell. Watermelon. This is my favorite watermelon, and I get ripe fruit consistently year after year after year when I grow this one, and 65 days. It does set fruit early, it grows quickly, and it matures on the vine outside, which, you know, after you pick a watermelon, it doesn't really mature anymore after that. So this is a good sweet watermelon to grow. I would highly recommend it, this Sureness hybrid. Now, just because it's yellow doesn't mean all yellow watermelons are the same. Here is Yellow Buttercup Hybrid, 90 days to maturity. That's 25 days, I think, if my math is correct. Yeah, that's 25 days. That's almost a month difference in maturity. And I'm usually picking the Sureness variety in September. So, you know, there you go. Just look at the seed packets. Peppers. Most peppers are going to have about 75 days to maturity. This one, some of the hot peppers are quite a bit longer. This one, 90 days to harvest for this Wicked Ghost pepper, hot pepper, and this red bell pepper on this Mackenzie seed pack is probably something that a lot of us would just pick up. Red bell, yeah, that's what I want to grow. 95 to 110 days to harvest to maturity. So maybe think twice about that one. On the other hand, here is my favorite, one of my favorites. I have two favorites for peppers, and Red Knight is one of them. 67 days, and I am always picking red peppers off the vine in my garden, and they mature well. They get nice, thick, blocky fruits and juicy, and you know, there's more to just turning color on a pepper. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens, and so when you get a nice mature pepper within a shorter growing time, that's a win-win for me. Another thing that can be on the seed packet are a bunch of different codes. It could say OP, which means open pollinated. It may say if the seed is a hybrid, which means it's a cross, human controlled cross breeding between different species or varieties. Hybrid also means that the seed that is produced from that plant will not be true to the parent plant. It could be one or the other, or it could be a different cross all between. Wave petunias are a good example of this. They produce seed pods, and you could collect that seed, but you're not going to get, all of the plants are not going to be true wave petunias the next year. Some may be, but a bunch of them will not be as well. There's still going to be a petunia and still nice, but they might be pink or, they might be a different color. They might have a different habit. They're not going to be exactly the same as a wave petunia. Also, a lot of seed packets may indicate that the plant is non-GMO, and just don't assume that because it doesn't say that on the package that seed is genetically modified, because it probably isn't. The seed packet may also indicate a bunch of codes for disease resistant. There's a lot of them. Something like powdery mildew, for example, it might say resistant to PM. And I found this list that it's a fairly extensive list of all the different kinds of codes that can be found in the catalogs. There's quite a few seed companies in Canada. And even if you're not planning to order from a seed catalog, I would suggest going online and still reading about the different kinds of seeds, spending some time there looking at the different kinds of varieties. You can also order catalogs from a lot of these seed companies. And so I'll just list a few, and I'll also put links to all of the websites down in the description. And William Dam from Ontario, that's probably my number one place to order from. I always have good luck with them. Vessie's from PEI, T&T, Mackenzie and Lindenberg from Manitoba, West Coast Seeds from BC, Prairie Garden Seeds from Saskatchewan. They're a good source that I don't know if a lot of people know about. Early's Garden from Saskatoon. They're also a good spot to order from. And then in Ontario, there's also OSC Seeds and Richter's in Ontario. That's a really great place if you want to grow a bunch of herbs and different kinds of herbs. They have a really excellent variety. So again, just look down in the description for all the links to all their websites. Spend some time. Thanks for watching today, and I hope you found it helpful or informative in some way. If there's something that I didn't touch on that you had hoped that I would, please leave me a comment down below, or if I confused you in some way, let me know. Also, let me know what your favorite seeds are for various vegetables that you grow, or did I forget a growing source, a seed source? Let me know in the comments. If you did like the video today, give me a thumbs up, share with your friends, and hit that subscribe button. Thanks again. See you.